After weeks of you guys requesting and some threatening to take my family, I finally decided to make the video covering all the Baryonyx shown to us throughout the entire franchise. Now, this is an interesting one because unlike a lot of the other medium-sized theropods like the Allosaurus and Carnotaurus, these fellows were actually in the Jurassic universe since the second movie of the franchise. They just weren't shown on screen. On Isla there were a total of 5 Baryonyx made. However, it's not known if those specific individuals are currently alive or not, since it's been more than like 2 decades now. And InGen did make some more on Isla Nublar, which are the ones we see on screen. But even then we don't get to see all of them, because the total amount of these guys made is somewhere between 10 and 12 depending on what sources you look at. The Baryonyx in this franchise, despite being decently inaccurate to the real animal, actually has one of my favorite designs. Instead of a thin jaw with the classic rosette for catching fish, InGens have large broad crocodile-like jaws for bringing down large herbivores. Not to mention their buff size, and aside from their appearance, their overall behavior varies from individual to individual, with some members hunting in packs that have more coordination than some of the raptors in the franchise. But with all of that said, every single one of the Baryonyx that have been shown on screen has suffered. Like some of the animals for different species I've covered in other videos at least have a somewhat happy ending, but none, and I mean none of these guys have a good life, or had a good life. I don't know what's the agenda with the saga on them, but damn do they live the most miserable of lives. If you wonder where these suggestions come from, they are from the members in the Discord, although some of the comments in YouTube also influence me. But if you want to take part in different events on the server like art and even hybrid creations, join the Discord in the description. So without wasting anyone's time, let's get straight into the video. We're going to start off strong with the most popular ones shown on screen. Now, as a disclaimer, one of the members of this trio could be the same one we see in 2 different videos, and if so would cut down the number of Baryonyx significantly if it is in fact the same individual. But before we get into that, we gotta address the entire Camp Cretaceous trio first. The pack consists of what's more than likely a group of siblings called Limbo, Chaos and Grim, with Limbo being the only male of the group. But with that said, his sisters are usually more dominant. Despite being solitary animals usually by nature, these siblings are very close. If one member goes missing, they will search the entire area until they find that missing member, dead or alive. And we see this with their introduction where Chaos and Limbo are first seen. Even though it was Darius who technically led them to their sibling, they still were rejoiced to see their little sister alive. Chaos tried to somehow break into the cage to no avail, while their brother, he got distracted trying to eat the campers. Eventually he joined up back with Chaos, who was having some trouble dealing with the Stegosaurus group, but after Grim met up back with her siblings, the tables turned and they then chased the Stegosaurus group away. Off topic, but they are the only Stegosaurs I've seen in the entire franchise that didn't stand on business, because all of them in the other installments would never run away like that. Similarly to Toro, a lot of this trio screen time involved them somehow bumping into the campers randomly at some points and having a whole chase sequence. The most impressive of which was when Bumpy was involved. These guys, despite not being fully grown yet, still weighed as much as a big buffalo. And despite this, were able to keep up with motorcycles and jump from rock to rock as though Naruto trained them. It's even more impressive when you realize that they could do all of that just after being knocked to the ground by an explosion. The scenes with the entire Barry pack throughout just seem wholesome and nonchalant, especially with the group sleeping in a ball. But sadly that was the last time we got to see the group as a trio, because Grim went out to investigate some sounds out in the open, which led her to Tiff, who shot her after the animal charged towards her. And so the Barry trio was now a duo. It honestly broke my heart to see Limbo and his sister see the youngest member dead on the floor. At first they thought he was sleeping or something, but the moment they realized their third member was dead, the siblings went out on a rampage, because like a lot of InGen's dinosaurs, these guys have an incredible sense of smell, and likely picked up Tiff and Mitch's scent. And it works because at the end of season 2 they caught up to Mitch and just brought her life to an end. But as most of you know, this revenge isn't the happy ending they were destined to have, because like most of the other dinosaurs after season 2, they were captured and mind controlled in order to take part in dinosaur fights with people who have deep pockets and wanted to see these poor animals fight. Limbo was the one who was mind controlled the most during the entirety of season 4 and was often seen by Toro's side, who was also being mind controlled. But unlike Toro, he doesn't get any sort of freedom or liberty at the end of the show. Instead, Limbo gets his back and ribcage crushed as Big E.T. grabs him out of the bunch of dinosaurs standing still and launches the poor sub-adult Baryonyx across the floor, instantly killing him. So this now leaves us with the last remaining member of the iconic Baryonyx trio, who survived throughout the entire saga but suffered through all of it. Alright, strap in folks, because Chaos is going to have the most information being covered compared to the rest of her species. Now, this isn't confirmed, but it's heavily implied that Chaos is the same Baryonyx we see from the start of Fallen Kingdom to the end of Chaos 3, where she ends up on Malta. If not, then there are 2 other Baryonyx, but from all the information online as well as the similarities in pattern throughout the saga, it's more than likely Chaos. With Chaos now being the sole survivor of her clutch, she was now alone. And maybe it's just me, but she seemed a little more aggressive and manic. Did anyone else notice that? I mean, all of them were, but she now just seems more frustrated. In season 5 you could see just how more hostile she's become, which you can't really blame her for. She's something like Blue, who lost all of her siblings and survived all installments, except Blue had Owen and eventually had a daughter to keep her company, while Chaos stayed alone for the remainder of her life. On her own, she also doesn't have that much success when hunting. as even the Parasaurolophus gave her a run for her money. Now 2 years later, during the events of Fallen Kingdom, we see Chaos return in the underground tunnel where she's chasing Claire. The reason why most of the fandom, including myself, saying this is Chaos is because the timeline somewhat matches the events currently taking place, and the pattern is almost exactly the same. The Barry in Fallen Kingdom even has the same blue spot as Chaos did in Camp Cretaceous, only more dark now because she's gotten older. Now she does get her head burnt by the lava, which is kinda sad, and from what most of us saw in the theaters back in 2018, she was just left to die in the tunnels, but we see her being taken away by a helicopter later on in the movie. I don't know how they got her out or how she even escaped, but I guess they have their means. Like Demon the Carnotaur, she's put up for auction in the Lockwood Manor, and then in a holding area until they're ready for transport. But again, just like Demon, she makes her appearance again in Chaos Theory. 4 years later have passed, and just like the Allosaurus at the auction and Demon, she's gotten a lot more rugged and lost a lot of her colour, but she still has her iconic blue spot in her cheek which separates her from the rest. She's also gotten a lot more bulky, now around 2.5 tons in weight. The first time in Chaos Theory we see her was in a crate waiting for transport, and the last time we see her was her fighting a mega cloud of locusts which kept her from eating the Nublar 6. It isn't known what happens to her after this, but if I had to guess, Barry and his team likely recaptured her and put her in some reserve, or she somehow escaped into the wild and lived out the rest of her days alone, as the last member of the iconic trio. However, that doesn't necessarily mean her legacy came to an end, since the next Barry may be the future of our bloodline. In Dominion, we see the second Baryonyx of all the movies, which is a very aggressive juvenile that's in the ring battling an Allosaurus similar in size. Now this juvenile, believe it or not, just relays how bad Chaos had it, because there's a very good chance that this is Chaos' offspring. Like Demon and the Allosaurus at the end of Dominion, Chaos may have been used as a breeder to produce more dinosaurs with strong genes that increase the chances of owners winning. For example, Demon is one of the strongest, if not the strongest Carnos in the franchise, and the Allo is the same, although Aftershock is likely stronger than Dominion's Allosaurus. As for Chaos, she's one of the last survivors of her species and has been through a whole lot of events, so she would be a perfect candidate to produce more fighters. Now there's two ways this could have went down. The first way is with normal procreation, where a male was somehow brought in and eggs were taken, or what's even worse and just tragic, she cloned the baby the same way Blue did, and the youngster was forcibly taken from her and used in an arena for fighting. I know Chaos's timestamp for the video is finished, but damn, imagine losing all of your siblings and then possibly having your child taken away from you and forced to fight. This juvenile Baryonyx is pretty strong too. If it is in fact Chaos's child, then it definitely shows with its strength. Little bro broke the restraints and then murked Delacourt. Like its possible parent, we don't really know what happens next. Is it recaptured and put on a reserve, or does it escape into the wild somehow? Regardless, if there's anything positive I can say, it's that Chaos's lineage may have at least lived for a few more years, but still unfortunately died later on because in Rebirth almost all of these guys are dead. The last Baryonyx on the list is the only one that may have actually matched Chaos in terms of suffering, not necessarily because of the trials it went through, but just its very existence. In Chaos Theory, there are many new and weird creatures we get introduced to, but by far the most eerie was the leucistic Baryonyx. This Caucasian spinosaurid was genetically modified to be blind, but in exchange for the absence of sight, its other senses have become extremely heightened, such as smell and hearing. This, weirdly enough, gives the animal a few advantages over others of its own species in some areas, believe it or not. While most theropods in the franchise can see okay in the darkness, this Baryonyx can traverse through a pitch black environment quite well with its heightened hearing and sense of smell, so it won't have to waste much time trying to see where it could or could not step. However, there still are some things this Baryonyx will struggle with. If a target is in front of it but doesn't make any sound, it more than likely could smell them, but without hearing a sound, it won't be able to pinpoint exactly where they are. This is perfectly shown when we first see it. It's only able to pinpoint the exact location of the people in the pit when they make noise. If they keep quiet, it comes closer in the general direction, but not nearly as fast or precise compared to when it hears something. Another disadvantage of its heightened hearing is the pain that can come from it. High frequency sounds like alarms or sounds from multiple directions disorients the poor thing and even seems to cause it some amount of pain. Hell, the thing can even be manipulated with sound. Imagine you create a dinosaur for years from birth to adulthood, making it follow commands with a specific sound just for another literal dinosaur to make similar sounds and make the Baryonyx turn against you. Well, that's exactly what Dr. Sarr went through. When he snapped his finger to attack Red and Santos, Red noticed that the clicking sound determines what the Barry does, so it somehow, like the Indominus did to the Raptors, made the Barry turn against its handler, and both it and Red murked him later on. Red also uses the Barry to her advantage by having the animal help her capture some members of the Nublar 6, but sadly unlike Red, this Baryonyx did not survive the episode. After Santos and Brooklyn leave the area, the building explodes with the leucistic Barry in it. I won't say its life was sad because it couldn't see, because from birth it's nothing the animal could conceptualize, so it didn't have a need for it, but still being trained its entire life to follow commands to T and then just being manipulated later on in the end and killed is a sad way to go. But with its death is also the last Baryonyx on the list. Now there is a chance that the Baryonyx we see running off the cliff in Fallen Kingdom jumping into the ocean may be a different specimen, but That might have been chaos. I partially don't even know if it is a Baryonyx. I think it is. But hey, if it is in fact another Baryonyx, well, there you go. There's 6 Baryonyx on screen instead of 5. And like I said, there is a ever so slim chance that the Barry in the auction is not chaos, but everything does lean towards it being her. If you have any information suggesting it couldn't be her, then let me know in the comments, but that's just about it for this one, folks. Despite there being like 10 or more Barrys made in the franchise, only 5 are shown on screen. It's something like the 7 T-Rexes. 2 are missing and we only see 5 throughout the entire franchise that were from the first generation. Anyway, that's it for this one, folks. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next video.